Jonah, you might start the meeting whenever you can, and please fill in on behalf of Reggie on the opening, please. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Eduardo. And please inform me if Reggie has joined before I get to his part of contribution. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all. Welcome to our second meeting of the Financial Considerations Virtual Working Group. Both Reggie and I are delighted to continue leading the work on financial considerations. Today we will have an open discussion on the establishment and engagement of multi-sectoral partnership and financing the Secretariat as presented in document ICAM/IT.4/2. We expect to continue with the cooperative atmosphere as we've had thus far. In the second part of the meeting, we'll also hear views on the Secretariat document on resource mobilization, cost recovery mechanism, and other economic instruments as presented in documents ICAM/IT.4/4 and ICAM/IT.4/7 respectively. The discussions will be using the same guiding questions as provided in the electronic feedback request. We are looking forward to a productive conversation in the second virtual. We would also like to thank you for your various inputs and acknowledge that the paragraphs numbered in the compilation document posted on the SICAM website differ from the numbers stated in the electronic request for feedback. We apologize as this may have caused some confusion. I will at this point turn over to the Secretariat to introduce the meeting information, documentation, agenda, and housekeeping. Secretariat, the Secretary.
Thank you, Jonah. So I think before introducing the meeting, we would like to recognize the presence of Mr. David Morin from Canada, co-chair of ICCM, who'd like to offer some remarks to all the participants before we start today's session. So I'll hand over the mic to David.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all SICAM participants. It is a privilege to be here with you today. Judith and I would like to take a few minutes to express our sincere thanks to all of you, SICAM community participants, for engaging in not just this virtual session, but all of the virtual sessions that have been that we've had over the past few weeks. As well as we'd like to extend our sincere thanks to Jonah and Reggie as co-facilitators for this important task and also at times challenging task as we navigate new waters. We're now doing something that we have never really done before in terms of having virtual sessions to advance work and to keep the momentum going. We'd also like to sincerely thank the SICAM Secretariat for their incredible support that they've provided over the past many weeks in terms of supporting these virtual sessions. SICAM participants, in terms of your work, your engagement, it is truly appreciated. There have been a large number of participants in these virtual sessions, as well as people who have submitted written submissions, which allow us to further advance our thinking, our understanding, and our appreciation of the different views. Judith and I are very conscious of the particular times we're living in, as well as the challenges of participating. And that is why we stress definitely the importance of both written and virtual participation. One of the things that we've definitely realized is that this is all new, and we are definitely adjusting the approaches based on comments that we hear back. So this is a bit of learning as we go. Judith The Secretariat, Madam President, and myself, as well as Bureau members, also felt that it is important that we advance discussions and maintain momentum in the current break that we have with regards to our in-person participation. The last meeting that we had, IP3, was in Bangkok in October 2019. This is now almost 14 months ago, and by the time we do get together for our next in-person meeting, it will easily be 18 months. So this could be almost like reading a book, putting it down, and then getting back to it a long time later. We sort of forget where we are, and this is why we felt that it's important to maintain the momentum, particularly with regards to such an important topic as the sound management of chemicals and waste. In his speech last week, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres mentioned that this new framework for the sound management of chemicals and waste beyond 2020 was an important conference to protect people and the planet and to lead the world into a more sustainable future. So this, the importance of the work we are doing was fully recognized. So all this to say, I think that by having these dialogues, by understanding our different views, appreciating different perspectives through these virtual sessions, through the written submissions, that we will definitely be well positioned to continue our negotiations when we meet again in person at the next IP. So Judith and I would sincerely like to thank you all for your continued participation. We encourage your input and wish you all the best in the new year. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful session.
Thank you very much, David Moran, co-chair of the ICCM. So we do have now Reggie Ernaus, co-facilitator, connected to the meeting. So I'll give you the floor, Reggie, for some welcoming remarks.
Okay, thank you, Eduardo, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I hope it is not a bad omen that I was connected a bit late, but I finally managed. I just see it as a new challenge to have a very interesting and constructive virtual working group meeting today. First of all, welcome everybody. I'm glad that everybody will participate in this virtual working group, and we have to make progress anyway. This will be the last meeting of this year, this calendar year at least. But now at stake are still some remaining issues which we have to deliberate upon. I hope we can make progress. I hope that we can indeed have more insights in everybody's views on the specific issues which are on the table now for discussion. And let's hope that we can finalize our work on time early next year in order to report back, of course, to the co-chairs and to the Bureau on the outcome of our work. It's again a pleasure to work together with Jonna and also with the Secretariat of the SciChem family. So let's make it a success, and hopefully we can make progress today. Thank you very much, and back to you, Eduardo or Jonna, to continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. So I'm going to move quickly just for an introduction of the meeting where we will see the agenda. So move up to the next slide, please, Alex. So there are 5 agenda items for today's meeting, and we are now on the second point. And this will be just a short overview of the agenda and some housekeeping rules before we start the discussion. Following that, we will go straight into the topics of strategic partnerships and financing the Secretariat, and we will spend a bit more than an hour on that discussion. There, the co-facilitators will provide with a summary of the submissions that we have received on each paragraph, and we'll open the floor for additional inputs and comments from participants for about 10 to 15 minutes in each one of the paragraph in question. Then we will move on to a brief discussion on resource mobilization and cost recovery mechanisms and other economic instruments. And before closing, the co-facilitators will also propose some next steps moving forward. You can go to the next slide, Alex. In terms of, and to the next now. In terms of the second electronic feedback request on strategic partnerships, financing the Secretariat, resource mobilization, and cost recovery mechanisms, the Secretariat received 10 submissions from Brazil, Canada, the EU and member states, ICCA, Iran, IPEN, Japan, Norway, UNEP, and the United States of America. And all these submissions are publicly available as well in the virtual working group page at the SICAM website that you are all familiar with by now. So I would also, you can stay on that slide, Alex, the previous one. Before we go to the issue of the discussion today, I'd like to give you a bit of guidance again on how we're conducting the meeting. So we would have oral intervention from participants, and the process to take the floor would be to use the raise hand function when you would like to speak. Maybe you can show it, Alex, on your screen now. This is a function that is located on the right hand corner below of your of the WebEx application if you have a PC version, and then you would click on it, and we would recognize your interest to take the floor, and we'll unmic your so that you can take the floor and make your intervention. Please remember that when you start your intervention, if you can say your country or organization to facilitate the meeting, and try to keep your intervention short. And once you've finished your intervention, we do encourage you to please lower your hand so that unmute your mic so that we can give the floor to the next person. However, if you are having any issues to find the raise hand function, you can always use the chat function. You can open the chat and click message to everyone so that we can all receive your message, and please state your organization and your interest that you would like to take the floor. So we would be taking the intervention list from raise hand function, but also from the chat if you have any trouble finding the raise hand function. So I think these are the housekeeping rules for today's meeting, and I will turn it now over to Jonah to start the discussion of today. So Jonah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Reggie, it's good to have you. And thank you to Didi for these warm comments and words of encouragement. We'll proceed now to our attention to third item on our agenda, which is strategic partnerships. We received, could you move to the next slide, please? We received a total of 9 submissions, and my co-facilitator and I summarized the views and comments received under the modalities of strategic partnerships under paragraph 17 and page 16 of the compilation document SICAM/IP/2. And the summary goes, our summary is as follows. All stakeholders agreed with the importance of partnership to advance multi-sectoral cooperation and support the implementation of the Beyond 2020 framework. Some stakeholders, the EU and member states, UNEP and the United States, proposed that paragraph would best fit on the part 5 of the implementation mechanism, sections C or D. One stakeholder, Iran, underlined the necessity for strengthening a coordinated framework for action at the international level among partnership. Another stakeholder, IPEN, highlighted the need for transparency and suggested having a publicly available registry of partnerships containing the text of the agreement, terms of reference, information about fundraisers, fundraising levels, periodic updates, and review. Stakeholder Brazil noted that these strategic partnerships should play a role in providing developing countries with technical assistance, technology transfer, and other sources of funding. And two stakeholders, namely ICC and IPEN, tried to define the terms of those partnerships, such as the need for a clear mandate, goals, targets, and to be time-bound, to be coherent with national and international laws, having defined roles and responsibilities of the stakeholders, transparency and accountability, be multi-stakeholder driven, and have a mechanism to ensure commitment. Before we open up the floor, so this is a summary that we have compiled based on the inputs received. I'm not sure if Iran is and no, they are not there. So we would like to take this opportunity right now to open up the floor for comments and views on this strategic partnership. I wonder if you could assist us with that.
Yes, so as I said, please use the raise hand function so that you can express your interest. So I see already one hand raised. So David Azulay from here. So I'm opening the mic.
Thank you very much, and good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. Thank you very much for the summary of submission, which I think is quite useful and might allow us to move a little faster. I had originally raised my hand before we got into the program because I wanted to ask you some procedural questions about how the work from our last meeting is being taken forward, but maybe you were planning to do this at the end of the meeting, so I'll leave that up. But I did want to ask information about this and about the small group that has been created in the meantime. So I hope we'll have space in that meeting to discuss this. And in addition to what you've highlighted as one of our key concerns about transparency, we also note that there should be guiding principles and criteria to orient stakeholders in concluding or not concluding partnerships. And we noticed that there are a list of existing global UN principles that relate to environment and that relate to partnership that could be very useful to guide SAICM's processes. And in particular, we identify UNDP's guidelines for private sector partners risk assessment tool that could provide the Secretariat with an easily transposable set of criteria to assess partnerships. And we invite all stakeholders to take a look at those criteria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. And again, I would just highlight that all inputs are available on the SAICM website, and we encourage everyone to the website and review these inputs to see where we might have points of convergence as we move forward and do this. Thank you very much.
Jonah, we have Marina Carrillo who wants to take the floor.
Marina, please take the floor.
Okay, it seems she lowered her hand now. Okay, Marina, you are unmuted. And please state your organization or country you represent, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I got lost with the buttons. My name is Marina. I am from the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for this opportunity as well as the summary. I just have a quick question. I will not enter the substantive discussion because I understand it's already been said. Our position has already been said in the summary. I just have one quick question. Maybe I wasn't paying attention or I got lost. This small box in the PowerPoint, is this the streamlined version of the text that you you wrote after receiving the inputs, or was this the original version that then parties provided input to? It's just to be clear. I'm really sorry if this has already been addressed.
Jonah, you'd like me to take that?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, so the paragraph that would be projected in today's meeting are all directly extracted from the document of compilation of recommendations. So they are the original paragraph in that paper. We haven't presented any text proposals on here. There are no other requests from the floor right now, Jonah.
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. And if there are no, I believe we have another one from Laura.
Yes, Laura, I'll unmute you so you can take the floor.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to note that I'm speaking on behalf of EU and its member states today. So I wasn't quite sure if you wish to have further comments on the substance after your summary, but if you allow, I would just very briefly say a few comments from our side. So as the co-chairs mentioned, we also agree to the importance of the partnerships for the Beyond 2020 work, and we do think we need collaboration, partnerships, coordination, and exchange of knowledge to be efficient in our work. And we see that such partnerships should be developed and maintained for specific and dedicated tasks, which could support the implementation of the future framework and also to help us achieve the objectives as well as the SDGs. It was already raised that we did question whether this is the best place for this chapter or this paragraph, and we look forward to discussing that further. I just wanted to also say on the specific wording of the para 17 that we would suggest not to limit the scope of partnerships only to issues of concern, but to replace this wording with sound management of chemicals and waste. And we would also seek clarification on the wording engaging mechanisms in all sectors, which is in the end of this paragraph. So that would be our comments in short. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura, for your comments and inputs. And yes, we are welcoming comments, additional comments. We would ask to refrain from repeating comments that are already submitted, but we do welcome any expansion or in-depth explanation on comments that was submitted to make the point more crystal clear, for lack of a better word. Do we have any?
Yeah, we do have Andrew Clark from the U.S.
Okay, Andrew Clark, please take the floor.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to the Secretariat and to you, the co-conveners, for pulling this together today. We appreciate all your efforts in getting this together and hosting us. I think we did submit written comments on this paragraph, including some suggestions on the text, so I won't get into those in detail, but I would like to say that I think that we do think that this text could be clarified a little bit, and we also think it is important to make sure that there's more mention of successful existing partnerships, that they should also be. We should also encourage those to be implementation of those to continue. So we think that that should be reflected in the text. And we also want to make sure that we're not being too limiting in the text on what kind of partnerships would be useful. So one example of that is I think we wouldn't think that it would make sense to only encourage partnerships that have the explicit links to the 2030 agenda, as that might not be the case in all partnerships, particularly some existing ones that may even predate the 2030 agenda. And then, I think it also would make sense, as the EU mentioned earlier, to not necessarily have them linked to issues of concern. Of course, those partnerships on those, any of those that come about would be useful. So I think I would just, suggest that we can make this a little bit more not too limiting, and hope that we're encouraging to continue the work that is successful, that's ongoing, as well as the new work that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Andrew.
We have now Jill Hanna asking for the floor, Jonah.
Jill, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonah. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. And thank you for taking the time to go through this. We in the Global Alliance on Health and Pollution would like to keep the link to the 2030 agenda. We think the 2030 agenda is all-encompassing. That's what the United Nations General Assembly decided, and it doesn't exclude things which date from before. And we think it's important to reference this because this is the framework that the world is using to prioritize development efforts and the mobilization of resources these days. And to ignore it, I think, is to harm sound management of chemicals and waste. In fact, we're doing some work at the moment looking at whether sound management of chemicals and waste actually receives the attention it should through the indicators of the SDGs. And we would argue that it doesn't enough. And therefore, the more we can tie these two processes together, the better it is for those of us who are interested in pollution and health and the sound management of chemicals and waste. We would share the EU's point about changing issues of international concern into sound management of chemicals and wastes. And finally, this is just addressed to stakeholders, and we wonder whether it would be, and we welcome that obviously, but we wonder whether it would be good to make a mention somewhere in this of the Secretariat to show that, the stakeholders are going to manage this much better if they are facilitated by the Secretariat somewhere in there. Because in practice, that's how partnerships work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
We do have Servet from ICCA asking for the floor, Jonah.
Servet, could you please take the floor? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Jonah. Also from our side, Servet Gervin, ICCA, we would like to support the remarks made by, I believe it was Laura and Andrew, in what concerns not limiting the scope of the partnerships. Without repeating our submission, but we do provide some examples in the area of collaboration between regulators and industry to help setting up basic regulatory frameworks. And maybe we could also elevate these kind of partnerships into more formal partnerships, because now they are actually for us. So we very much also support the comments made by Andrew to also try to highlight the good practices and to elevate these into formal partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Servet. I believe we have Abbas.
Yes, we do have Torabi from Iran, so I'm opening the mic, Jonah.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Thank you for Secretary and co-facilitators for arranging this.
Abbas, I'm not sure if everyone is hearing you clearly, but you sound very low on my end. I'm not sure if Eduardo could confirm if that's the same. So if you could move closer, we would appreciate that.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but very low. Abbas, maybe you can approach closer to the mic or...
Hello, can you hear me right now?
A bit better, yes.
I want to thank you, the Secretariat and co-facilitators, for arranging this very important meeting. We have already sent our input regarding this part of the text. We want to emphasize that linking the partnership to 2030 agenda maybe would not be very useful, because 2030 agenda and objectives are ambitious, and usually partnership objectives are targeting mid-term or short-term objectives. So we think it's better not to link it to 2030 agenda. Also regarding issues of concern, because it is already discussed in another group, another mutual working group, we think it's better to wait for outcome of that group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abbas, for your contributions. I hope that everyone heard sufficiently. Eduardo, could you hear clearly?
Yes, Jonah, it was a little bit challenging, but I think we could hear and we can take notes of intervention.
Okay, excellent. Do we have anyone at this moment who would like to take the floor?
We do not have any further requests for the floor.
Okay, so I would like to take this opportunity right now to thank all stakeholders for their contribution in this platform and in written submission. We have uploaded these written submissions onto the SICAM website, so we all have the opportunity to go and review and further discussions as we move forward in this process. We will take on board all your comments and suggestions, and we will work towards facilitating proposed text for consideration at the next meeting. So at this moment, I will pass the meeting over to my facilitator, Reggie, as we move into the next section, financing the Secretariat. Reggie, take the floor, please.
Alex, in the meantime, if you can move up to the next slide, please.
Yeah, I managed. Okay, thank you, Jonah, for giving the floor to me. But I suggest before we move on to the next session, well, since we have now also Iran on board, it may be helpful if the colleague from Iran could perhaps clarify the point he made or Iran made in their contribution, their written contribution, well, to the discussion on the establishment of partnerships. And you, Jonah, you also mentioned that, well, the point they made was that a stakeholder, it was Iran, underlined the necessity of strengthening a coordinated framework of action at the international level among partnerships. Well, at least that was not for me, and I think also not for you, very clear what was meant with that suggestion. So if the colleague from Iran, Abbas, could you please clarify this point? Are you in a position to do that? Because that would indeed facilitate our work in trying to craft our co-facilitators new text on this paragraph. That would be very helpful. Abbas, could you please clarify?
Abbas, you are unmuted.
So, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Maybe my connection is not very good. So, Eduardo, is my sound good? Eduardo, can you hear me?
We do hear you, yes, and actually better than the previous time.
Yes, I think the question from our colleague from Netherlands was about our proposal regarding strengthening the coordinated framework of action at the international level. We think that regarding partnership, our aim from suggesting this paragraph was to engage more stakeholder participation in partnership. And indeed, we have put emphasis on two stakeholders here because we think, as we see, inter-organization of program for the sound management of chemicals and the environmental management group mechanism. We have highlighted the role of those stakeholders in partnership because we think they can be more effective and help other stakeholders in partnership. So we have emphasized on their role. I think my explanation would be enough. If it is not enough, I will maybe later send something in writing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Abbas, for this clarification. I hope also Secretariat, Eduardo, that you listen carefully, and also Jonna, because that would indeed help our work in preparing the new text on this draft track recommendation. Thank you very much, Abbas, for this clarification. Okay, let's then move on to the next section, the section B, financing the Secretariat. In that respect, I would like to refer to the paragraphs 18 until 22, and the suggestion is that we follow the discussion paragraph by paragraph. We were very happy to receive on paragraph 18 a total of 10 submissions, respectively from Brazil, Canada, the EU and its member states, ICCA, Iran, Japan, Norway, IPEN, UNEP, the US. So that makes a total of 10. That was very helpful. And if you look at all those submissions, well, we try to make, of course, also an analysis of the input delivered by those stakeholders. And what we have made as a conclusion is the following, that all stakeholders support the need for more adequate, sustainable, and predictable funding for the Secretariat. That was made crystal clear. Secondly, stakeholders also noted that the donor base must be expanded. Contributions should be multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder in nature. Thirdly, all submissions highlight that contributions should be open to all stakeholders. Therefore, the proposals requests to replace industry stakeholders for all stakeholders in the second sentence of this paragraph, and to encourage all stakeholders to contribute. Fourthly, most stakeholders agree that contributions should be voluntary, while one stakeholder, Iran, notes the polluter pays principle and proposes that industry contributions are mandatory. One stakeholder, IPEN, states that countries' contributions alone shall not be expected to deliver adequate and predictable financing to the Secretariat. They therefore propose this CL-IPEN proposal for a coordinated fee on chemicals feedstocks, which could be directed to financing the Secretariat with no additional costs for public budget. So this is the summary of the views and comments received on the modalities for financing the Secretariat under paragraph 18, page 16 of the compilation document 4/2. What I want to do now is to open the floor for any additional comments from participants in this virtual working group, and then on the specific paragraph that have not been already mentioned by you in your written comments and also not has been addressed in the summary. May I now please open the floor for any contributions from the stakeholders?
Reggie, we do have Japan followed by Canada asking for the floor.
Okay, Japan, please. Suki, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
you can. Thank you.
Hi, so this is the first time for me to take the floor in this working group. So this is Suki from Japanese Ministry of Environment. And thank you very much for the co-facilitators and the secretariat. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear colleagues. So we would like to propose a different approach to finance the secretariat from the current wording. So our proposal came from two concerns we had. The one is the lack of visibility of various contributions other than financial contribution. According to independent evaluation between 2006 and 2015, paragraph 51, stakeholders demonstrated their commitment to current SICAM through various in-kind contributions. However, only financial contribution is officially acknowledged within the current framework. And we would like to raise the visibility of non-financial contribution. The second is the current text specify which group of stakeholders should make which type of contribution, but such restrictive wording is not beneficial. We believe that the paragraph should be more encouraging for all the stakeholders to make various type of contribution, but not only the financial ones. So in this paragraph 18, we would like to propose an alternate paragraph, which is, according to the Secretariat, available online, that the paragraph that states the Secretariat to produce a budget structured by the expenditure code as well as by work plan. This makes the cost of each activity visible. Also, we suggest to remove the word industry as there's no benefit to specify which stakeholder should make what contribution. And we would keep making the input on the different paragraphs, but that's it for the paragraph 18. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Suki, for your intervention, and indeed very interesting that you have now a new proposal, an alternative text for paragraph 818. But you also mentioned, and also the Secretariat confirmed that at an earlier stage to me, that this is also part of your submission in your feedback for this meeting. So everybody can have a close look at your proposal, and I thank you very much for your for your justification, the rationale of your proposal. What I suggest is at least that we take note of your proposal. Again, it is publicly available, and that we will revisit it in more detail at our next meeting. But that in the meantime, participants can have a close look at your proposal. And ultimately, we will have to talk about our draft recommendations in another setting, of course, at IP4. But for the time being, it's good to have your proposal already on the table on how to proceed with this paragraph. Thank you very much again for your proposal. And, well, all other participants, please have a close look at it and, well, digest it and come with your views on it at our next meeting. Next speaker on the list, Eduardo, was?
Yeah, next we have Canada, followed by Jill Hanna.
Okay, Canada, please, the floor is yours. Greg, I assume, or not?
Yes, hi, Reggie, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to you and Jonah and our colleagues around the world. It's a very frosty day here in Canada, so good to be with you. Well, we have submitted written submissions, but I just wanted to highlight a few points. As you mentioned, we'd like to see the term voluntary used consistently. So either use it once in an umbrella kind of overarching paragraph, or has to proceed where it's applicable throughout. So clearly we'd like streamlined language, so an overarching umbrella emphasizing the term voluntary is always welcome. The other point, we sometimes see the words human resources or in-kind resources. We prefer the broader term in-kind resources where applicable. Human resources falls within those in-kind resources. And like Japan, we think this is a very important element. We also, in looking at paragraphs 20 to 22, defining the contributions, roles, and responsibilities of different stakeholders, we find that somewhat repetitive. And we suggested an alternative paragraph collapsing all those, so an all to 20 to 22. And while we put it in a written submission, just for the sake of everyone, I'll just read out what we have suggested. All stakeholders support the work of the Secretariat by voluntarily contributing financial and in-kind resources as appropriate, including inter alia through secondments, hosting meetings, supporting sector participation in meetings, awareness campaigns, contribution to projects, or contribution production and dissemination of outlets for the Beyond 2020 instrument. Where possible, the contributions are defined at the beginning of the budget cycle by an agreement between the respective organization and the Secretariat. So that's some of our ideas and thoughts on this particular section. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg, also for outlining your specific proposal on this matter. Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list was Jill Hanna, if I understand correctly. Jill, please.
Thank you very much, Reggie. And I just, for others who may know me, I just want to emphasize here that I am speaking for the Global Alliance of Health on Health and Pollution. Because I have to say that being in a budget discussion with Reggie and Greg and a number of other old friends is a bit strange when I'm wearing a different hat. But it's a pleasure to be with you all. I have to say I'm a little bit puzzled by this whole part of the text because it seems to me that it's missing quite a lot of technical detail that it needs. If we're talking about financing the Secretariat in the instrument itself rather than in a resolution that might accompany it and might be adopted by the ICCM 5. For one thing, it doesn't say who approves the budget. I don't suppose we really mean, as is set out in paragraph 18, that a budget is identified by God, or maybe the Secretariat, in which case it will be a Christmas tree or a wish list. It needs to be scrutinized by somebody, preferably all stakeholders who might contribute to it. So it will need to be reviewed at the meeting at which it should be approved. Then if it is to be a budget that is administered by UNEP, for example, the trust fund for it will need to be approved by the UN Environment Assembly. We might want to put it somewhere else, I don't know, but that kind of thing is not here. I understand the reason for people wanting a mention of in-kind contributions, but if we have a mention of in-kind contributions, for GAP it would be really important to say those must be in line with the rules of the UN on in-kind contributions, because sometimes staff resources are offered to do particular things that are wanted by the donor rather than necessarily by all of the stakeholders involved in the process. So that kind of language would seem to us at least to be important. If I understood Greg's proposal properly, and I'm afraid I haven't had a chance to look at all the proposals on the website. It was talking about not just financing the running cost budget of the Secretariat, but also donations for projects. I don't know whether that actually ought to be a separate section, because there are Secretariat run projects. There may be other kinds of projects. The Secretariat will need some resources to keep partnerships going, for example. But they are different from the basic running costs of the Secretariat. And they are always, those other things are always voluntary. Now, because this is a voluntary instrument, it's always had to have voluntary contributions from everybody. And having sat through its budget negotiations since Dubai, it's always been very difficult to get those resources. So for us, it would be very good if, while accepting that it needs to be voluntary, some of the language on the joint responsibility of all governments and maybe all stakeholders to contribute to keeping the process able to function needs some good, strong language. So I would hope that our co-chairs, having balanced the room, will be able to include good, strong language on that point. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for your intervention. Is there another speaker who wants to take the floor? Eduardo?
We do have quite a few requests for the floor, Reggie. So we do have now Andrew Clark from the US, followed by David Azulay from CL and Servet from ICCA.
Okay, thank you. Eduardo, just before you give the floor to the next speaker, well, please, those who will make an intervention, be brief and to the point, because there are many, the list of speakers is relatively long, and we also have a lot to address at this virtual working group anyway. So please be a bit, short in your intervention. Thank you. Next speaker was? I forgot already.
The US.
The US. Andrew, please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Reggie, and I will do my best to be brief. So yes, I think that you did, discuss one of our big overarching concerns with this section of the text about the language that kind of bifurcated roles between different kinds of stakeholders in terms of supporting the Secretariat. So I think that is all well covered and was covered in our written submission. So, but I think that's important, just to make sure that we aren't prescribing what kind of contribution each stakeholder can make. I would like to just very briefly reflect on what Japan put forward earlier, noting that you did say we will discuss it in more detail later on, after all of us have had a chance to reflect on it a bit. But I do think this is an interesting idea. I think as Jill previously noted, we might have to think about how exactly the language on this would look, but I think it is a very, since we are making reference to the different kinds of contributions beyond financial ones that stakeholders are encouraged to make, I think it would be very useful for us to find a way to reflect those kinds of contributions and make sure that they aren't kind of lost in the shuffle and we're not just recognizing those that make financial contributions. So I do think this is a very good idea from Japan, and I look forward to discussing it in greater detail later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And indeed, it was not the intention to downgrade a bit this proposal from Japan anyway, and I fully agree with you. I also see merit in having, well, further discussion on this proposal, because again, what I mentioned before, it's a very interesting one on how to proceed with the financing of the Secretariat. So we will revisit it anyway at another time. Thank you very much for that. Next speaker on the list was David from CL. Yeah.
That is correct, Reggie.
Yeah, thank you. David, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Reggie. I quickly wanted to support one of the points that was raised by Jill about the need for in-kind contribution to follow the rules and guidelines of UNEP and targeting effective implementation of the agreement. And that relates to also a couple of additional points that we've raised in our in a written submission. One is about the need for a contribution, in particular for industry contributions, not to be earmarked to guarantee more efficiency to the Secretariat's functioning, as well as to avoid any even appearance of conflict of interest. And for the very same reason, we also believe that for a number of stakeholders, secondment to the Secretariat are not appropriate because they give a possible impression of conflict of interest, even though those are not real or realized. We know that an appearance of such conflict can taint quite a lot of work, and it would be a pity to downgrade or disregard some of the work by the Secretariat for those reasons. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, David, for your intervention. Next speaker, Eduardo.
Yes, we do have next on the list Servet from ICCA, followed by Marta from Norway.
Okay, Servet, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Regie. Very briefly, we fully recognize the lacks that are mentioned by Japan, by Canada, by US on the visibility for non-financial contributions to be added to the text. So there we fully are aligned, including the fact that I'm not singling out any stakeholders, but to mention that all stakeholders are invited to contribute. And then on the proposal explained by Suki, and I fully agree with Andrew, it looks a very interesting one. It also looks quite similar to what ICCA is doing for in our memorandum of understanding with the SAICM Secretariat, to also identify what are the projects that are beneficial for all stakeholders. So it's a bit of an activity-based accounting, if you may, without being an accountant myself. But I very much like the idea, and it would merit indeed further discussing this proposal by Japan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Servet. Next speaker on the list.
Marta from Norway.
Yeah, Marta, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. First of all, I just want to say that we're also going to look into the suggestion from Japan, which sounded interesting. And I just wanted to make a general point of the fact that we depend on a robust secretariat that needs adequate funding. So that's a fundament for our activities. And then I was just wondering about the text itself in the paragraph, because are the costs that are mentioned in the paragraph, are they an exhaustive list of core costs, if you understand what I mean? And I think maybe the paragraph should be phrased to show that this is not maybe an exhaustive list of costs that could be considered core. I hope that was clear, because I think maybe if this is a list of core costs for the budget, it should maybe include more costs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marta, for raising this issue. We will take note of it. The next speaker on the list.
So now we have Felix from Switzerland, followed by Laura from the EU.
Okay, Felix, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Felix Wertli from Switzerland. I think first of all it's very encouraging to hear that the need for adequate and sustainable financing for the Secretariat is so widely acknowledged, and also that the broader range of stakeholders has to become donors to achieve the sustainable base. Just also to recall that really was one of the main findings of the evaluation of the SAICM, that the lack of financing for the Secretariat really had an impact, a negative impact on what you could achieve in the last phase. So in principle, we support the ideas that is set out in the text. We have seen and heard the comments from Canada and the European Union. So Canada, we have heard of the European Union, we have seen the text, how to streamline the text, how to make it more clear. For example, to use the term voluntary or in kind. I think that's something interesting. We can look into that. However, we think it's important to emphasize that each stakeholder group should contribute according to their know-how, resources, and size, and so on. So somehow we would like to favor a process where contributions, and I agree with previous speakers, they can be in kind or financially, can be announced to gain visibility, And that should be quite at the early stage, for example, at the beginning of a budget cycle, to enhance the predictability. So I think it makes sense for us to work to improve the text to make it clear, but it's good also that it's very clear that we need more financing for the Secretariat, that each stakeholder group has own capacities, manage how they contribute. They're not identical for all of the stakeholder groups, and that we need kind of a mechanism to announce them, also to make it clear how much we will have to be able to see if we can achieve the budget, but also to emphasize the responsibility of each stakeholder group to contribute to the extent they are able to, and with the resources and also know-how, the tools they have to achieve this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Felix, Switzerland, for your intervention. Before I give the floor to Laura on behalf of the EU, I would like to give the floor to Nalini, because she wanted to respond on the question on how the budget is being prepared by the Secretariat. So please, Nalini, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Reggie. And I think it's just really responding directly to the comment that was provided by Norway, but maybe, it's just a general input into the process. So from my previous experience, what normally has happened is that the Secretariat prepares a program of work and budget. In that program of work, of course, if you look at what the current Secretariat functions are that are listed in the compilation, we have, activities such as supporting the implementation of the instrument, capacity assistance, strengthening the working relationship with the IMC, other stakeholders in the sectors, promoting exchange of information for the knowledge management aspect of our work, etc. So in a way, we do need to translate that into a program of work and budget. And so in a direct response to Norway, you're right, it's not necessarily just the list that has been provided on the screen here. It will depend really on what the ambition level is as well, and what the program of work is as we adopt the new instrument and going forwards. Would the program of work and budget as Japan has now put as a proposal be a 2-year program of work and budget, or would it be 4 years? So there's a lot of dependence on that. And of course, if we are to do and implement the functions of the Secretariat as listed, we would need to have then dedicated resources in order to do so. So I hope that does respond to the questions and the queries. And we really welcome the further discussion, and I'm happy to facilitate some of the information that's required in order to come to a decision and discussion.
Okay, thank you, Nalini, for this clarification. Very helpful. And well, you did not only give an answer to the question raised by Norway, but it was also, at least for me, also very interesting to know how it really works in your area with respect to budgets. Thank you very much for that. Next speaker on the list was Laura for the EU. Please, Laura.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Maybe just to start with, Switzerland, for EU and its member states, it's also good to hear that in the written submissions, we share the view of the importance of more sustainable and predictable funding for the Secretariat. Since we made the written submission, I would just like to highlight briefly a few of our main comments on the specific paragraphs. So on the paragraph 19, as I guess it was summarized that everybody agreed that the financing of the Secretariat should remain voluntary, or at least almost all agreed. This is what we think as well. But at the same time, we think that the approach should have an indicative character, which would lead to a fair distribution of the financial burden amongst all stakeholders. So we do support applying the proposed UN scale of assessment as the reference for determining indicative contributions for governments. However, we would welcome further discussion and think this is needed regarding which part of a budget could be used to estimate government's voluntary contributions and those of other stakeholders respectively. And then I just wanted to comment on paragraph 20, where we support the intention of the paragraph and see the value of IGO's support for the work of the Secretariat, but we do recognize that the feasibility needs further discussion with the representative of the most relevant IGOs and including their governing bodies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. I hope there are no other speakers on this paragraph, because Laura, you were too quick. We will visit paragraph 20 a bit later, but at least thank you very much already for your input on that. But apparently there was also still another.
Yes, Reggie, we do have a couple of more requests for the floor. Yeah, that has been for a while already there. So we have Jacqueline from UNEP, followed by Marina from Brazil.
Okay, Jacqueline, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for being patient with us. But we really think it's very important what Norway, Switzerland, and others have indicated about the need to have a robust secretariat. We have faced not only with the evaluation, the challenges that were there, but the need for predictable funding on that. So even though core budget needs to be defined and adopted or approved at ICCMs in the future, it's also the need to have sustainable staff members. We cannot have an ad hoc secretariat, and this year we changed to this, and the next year we changed to that. We are also looking at an ambitious framework, and if you see over all the text as we are having, there are a lot of tasks that are still to be decided if there will be part of the secretariat role or not. And if that's the case, then all things really need to be very carefully, in a way, shaped, so that we don't get frustrations in 2 years or 3 years or when the next ICCM comes because of the lack of resources. So we really wanted to stress that, and also by saying that in UNEP, the understanding of the need of this framework has been supported for a long time, and we keep on doing that from the Environment Fund positions, and that goes into UNEA. So there is also, besides the budget that the Secretariat prepares for ICCM to adopt, there is also the contributions from, in this case, the host organization, that it is there. But it's our strong belief that if the Secretariat is not robust enough, then things will remain in the paper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline, for your intervention. Next speaker on the list is the colleague from Brazil, please. Brazil, you have the floor, please.
Marina, you might have some trouble with your mic. I'm trying to unmute you, but it doesn't work. Yeah, your mic is open, Marina.
Please, Marina.
Marina, you are unmuted. So it doesn't seem to work, Reggie. I would suggest that we troubleshoot directly with Marina to see what's going on, and you can move on to the next paragraph if you like.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's then move on to the next paragraph, paragraph 20, which is now on the screen, I hope. So paragraph 19 first. We have to go to
Yeah, 19 is on the screen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. On this paragraph, we received 7 submissions from Canada, the EU and its member states, ICCA, Iran, Japan, Norway, and the US. if you look at those submissions, well, it is at least our understanding, our summary, that 5 stakeholders, the EU and its member states, Canada, ICCA, Iran, and Norway, support the text of
Oh, Eduardo, I don't know, for some reason Reggie's been put on mute.
Your mic is on, Reggie.
Yeah, okay. Shall I start all over again? That we received 7 submissions on this paragraph 19 from Canada, the EU and its member states, ICCA, Iran, Japan, Norway, and the US. 7 submissions in total. Of which 5 stakeholders, the EU, Canada, ICCA, Iran, and Norway, support the text of the paragraph as presented, including the use of the UN scale of assessment as the reference for country contributions under a voluntary approach. 2 stakeholders, Japan and the US, disagree to establish an indicative reference for the contributions from governments and suggest to remove the UN scale of assessment to avoid any suggestions of a minimum contribution, considering the voluntary approach of the instrument. Another stakeholder, Iran, states that contributions should be encouraged for countries that are in a position to do so. One stakeholder group, the EU and its member states, suggests to remove the reference to government stakeholder and use only governments instead. That was indeed what we received so far as written input from you. You see on the text now, on the screen now, the text of the existing recommendation which we discussed at IP3, our last meeting. The floor is now open for anybody who would like to make additional comments on the specific paragraph and which has not been discussed and addressed and mentioned in my summary. The floor is open for interventions. Who would like to start?
Reggie, we have Japan asking for the floor.
Suki, Japan, please. The floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much for the summary, Reggie. So we would like to make 3 comments. So the first one is there should be no benefit to limit the contribution from certain stakeholders, which is already addressed by the co-facilitator. And the second is we echo the need to have robust secretariat, but we don't think it's appropriate to request countries solely to provide financial contribution with the specific figures such as the UN scale of assessment under the Beyond 2020 instruments because it's a voluntary framework. Finally, we think that it would be more appropriate to specify expected contribution by types rather than category of stakeholders. So we would like to suggest to delete the paragraph 20, 21, 22, where it says which group of stakeholders should make which type of contribution. Instead, we proposed 3 types of contribution. The first is the financial contribution, and the second is the contribution to admin cost, and the third is the contribution to the logistical cost. And our example is, say, academia may have difficulties with the contributing financially, but may be able to host meeting at the university hall. So our idea is to quantify such in-kind contribution by allowing the stakeholders to choose which secretariat program of work they are contributing to, so that it is visible how much the secretariat actually saved by such in-kind contribution. This way, we believe that all the stakeholders may be more encouraged to make non-financial contribution as contribution is effective and also the amount is more visible. Thank you.
Also on this matter, and like I said before, this is also a very interesting proposal which merit more discussion. I would say it has very interesting elements. And again, this is also mentioned in your feedback, your written feedback to this process. So again, I think we should revisit this issue anyway and have in-depth discussions on your proposal at another moment. And again, stakeholders, please take note of this proposal, digest it, and that you come well prepared for the discussion at the next session of our work. Thank you very much. Anybody else who would take the floor? Eduardo?
Reggie, we do have Jill Hanna, followed by Felix from Switzerland.
Okay, thank you. Jill, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Reggie. And I am, as I say, I'm not speaking in a personal capacity. I'm speaking for the Global Alliance. Yeah, not at all. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to be called Jill, but I just wanted to be clear. A question to the Secretariat, if I may, through you. I'm assuming that there is no proposal to change the trustee for SICAM's budget at the moment, which means it's UNEA, which means it's UNEP and the governing body of that is UNEA. So if that is correct, then the way a budget is set out is a given that all countries have agreed to, all member states of the UN have agreed to through the General Assembly. And that is important, but it is equally important to follow what is being said about the need to recognize in-kind contributions in a better way. And I wonder if there is experience in the UN system that the Secretariat could make us aware of as to how you can square that circle. I'm not aware of any, but there must be some. The second thing is if, and again, this is a question for the Secretariat, if the use of a voluntary scale of assessment, an indicative scale of assessment, is well known to all states through the UNEA budget itself, through the Environment Fund. Now, when that scale is drawn up for the Environment Fund, one state which objects to the use of an indicative fund is left out. So everybody else is asked for more than you might imagine. So could the Secretariat provide an assurance that in this case, an indicative scale would be based on 100% contributions from all member states and not on what is the case there on 78% of the budget, normal budget, having to cover 100% of the resources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Global Alliance, for this question. Before I give the floor to the Secretariat to give a brief answer, a short answer to this question, a general remark, please, everybody who would like to take the floor, be brief and concise, because time is running out, and please don't repeat already the comments you made in your written submission to us, because again, time is running out and we have to move on. Secretariat, could you briefly answer the question raised by the Global Alliance, by Jill Hanna, please?
So unfortunately, I'm not in a position at the moment to respond completely to that question. I wonder if GAP could actually submit the question in writing, and then we can consult as well with the relevant, we have administrative colleagues, etc., and then get back to with a response at the next meeting, if that's possible.
Okay, also in the interest of time, let's do that. Eduardo, anybody else who would like to take the floor on paragraph 19?
Yeah, we do have only one more request from Switzerland.
Okay, Felix, Switzerland, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, co-chair. So just to start, I would like to say that we support also the para, like it is. And perhaps building up on the input of Japan to structure differently what kind of contribution. I think it's, as you have said, co-chair, that it's worth to discuss this further. One challenge from our side would be we as a government, we are not used to divide our contributions in-kind or financial and so on. We always, what we do, what we summarize is always financial. However, for example, Switzerland as a host country, when we provide facilities, meat facilities, this we are not used to put a number figure around it. So it would be really a huge challenge for us. Take also up just a point about voluntary. I think it's in the text of it there, we talk about voluntary financial contribution. Perhaps we can make it even more clear if that is helpful. And also just explain from our internal situation, for us it is very helpful. It would be very helpful to get such kind of indicative figure, because this would allow us to explain and justify to the Minister of Finance why we are doing this contribution. So internally, as a government, it is very helpful for us if we could use such kind of system. To say also an indicative scale, for sure that allows also to provide more. So if a country says, okay, that's really high priority for us, we want to provide more, this opportunity is still here. So I think if we can further work on this text, perhaps emphasize the term voluntary, and as also mentioned by Jill Hanna from GAP, I think also what is helpful here in this approach is that its indicative scale is a known tool, so it's also quite easy to understand. It's something we're already working with. And we all know, we have the experience, it is voluntary, it's not a pressure, but it's helpful for our internal processes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Switzerland. Thank you, Felix, for your intervention. Eduardo?
Yeah, we have one request coming in from Iran.
Iran, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just want to make this point regarding putting this criteria, the unit scale of assessment. Maybe some government stakeholders can contribute less than this. So what solution can we find for that? In the text it has said that at least the UN scale of assessment. If the government, the stakeholders can achieve less than the UN scale of assessment, how it will be contained in this text? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a bit difficult to follow. At least the sound was not too loud, but I hope that everybody could listen carefully to the intervention of the colleague from Iran. Anybody else, Eduardo, who would like to take the floor?
No, we do not have any further requests.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I suggest that we then move on to the next paragraph, paragraph 19, paragraph 20.
Paragraph 20 is on the screen.
Paragraph 20, yeah. Let's see. Paragraph 20, you see it now on the text. We received 8 submissions, 8 feedbacks on this issue from Canada, the EU and its member states, ICCA, Iran, Japan, Norway, UNEP and the US. So 8 submissions. And if you look at those submissions, well, our conclusion is that 4 stakeholders, ICCA, Iran, Norway and UNEP, support the text of the paragraph as it is. Bless you. Where other two, the EU and its member states and Canada, also agree with minor modifications. One stakeholder, Canada, suggests substituting human resources for in-kind resources. It also expands on the potential activities to be supported by the intergovernmental organizations. Example, organizations of meetings, supporting sector participation at meetings, awareness campaigns, or formal contributions to projects. Two stakeholders, Canada and Japan, also suggest to merge paragraphs 20 and 22 until 22 into a single paragraph that includes all stakeholders and specify the expected contributions by types of contributions rather than category of stakeholders. Both stakeholders propose alternative text to that aim. One stakeholder, the US, suggests deleting this paragraph as the international organizations have their own governing bodies, while another stakeholder, the EU and its member states, proposes further discussions with intergovernmental organizations to assess the feasibility of these proposed contributions. Some of the comments were already made by the proponents at an earlier stage of our meeting today. So please don't ask for the floor if you want to repeat them. But for those who really would like to intervene and would like to add additional comments, the floor is open for them to take the floor. Please, who would like to take the floor? Eduardo, any?
Yeah, we do have Caroline Vickers from WHO.
Yes, thank you, and hello, everyone. We would just like to reflect on the proposals made by Canada and Japan, because we believe that collapsing these paragraphs so that stakeholders have the opportunity to provide any contributions that are appropriate at the time would be very useful, and that would solve the issues that were raised by the EU and the US. Thank you.
Reggie, I think there's, you're muted, sorry. And anyways, there are no others requests for the floor now. I unmuted you anyway.
Okay, thanks. Caroline, are you there? Okay, well.
Yeah, I think she finished her intervention.
Okay, okay, great. Well, I didn't hear that, but I hope you.
So I'll open anyways, Caroline, if you have anything else to say. You are unmuted.
Yes, thanks, Reggie. Just to say that the World Health Organization notes that the proposals of Canada and Japan to collapse the paragraphs would to enable any stakeholder to provide any contribution that's appropriate at the time would resolve the issues that were raised by the EU and the US. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline, for repeating your intervention for me. Thank you very much for that. If there are no any other speakers on this paragraph, I suggest that we move then on to paragraph 21, the next paragraph. Well, we received 9 submissions from Brazil, Canada, the EU and its member states, ICCA, Iran, IPEN, Japan, Norway, and the US. And 4 stakeholders, Brazil, Canada, EU, and Norway, support the text of the paragraph as it is with minor editorial modifications. 2 submissions, EU and its member states and Iran, also request to include a reference to the determination of indicative contributions by non-governmental stakeholders. 2 submissions, Canada and Japan, suggest to merge this paragraph with paragraph 20 and propose alternative text. 1 submission, the one from the US, suggests removing paragraphs 21 and 22. The US does not believe that stakeholders' roles should be separated in that way and that the instrument should not predetermine the appropriate in-kind contribution for different types of stakeholders. In their view, all stakeholders should be able to support the Secretariat in the ways they are willing and able. Paragraph 18 could include more language if required to add options for stakeholders' contributions. That was the result of the feedbacks we received so far. But there are still two lacking. One stakeholder, ICCA, proposes to use the same wording as paragraphs 20 and 22, so that paragraph 21 reads that industry stakeholders contribute in kind through human resources instead of financial contributions. And the last comment, another stakeholder, IPEN, suggests removing secondments from the contributions to financing the Secretariat by industry stakeholders, as they could lead to a conflict of interest. It also suggests that a contribution agreement from private sector stakeholders to the Secretariat is made public. And I recall that David already made that point also in his intervention before. I would like to open the floor now for additional comments on this specific paragraph. Eduardo, are there any requests for the floor on this paragraph?
There are no requests for the floor now.
Okay, let's wait for a while. Perhaps some still want to take the floor. If not, I suggest we move on to the next and last paragraph, paragraph 22. We received for this paragraph 5 submissions from Canada, Iran, IPEN, Norway, and the US. The stakeholders' views expressed in those feedbacks are as following. For stakeholders, Canada, Iran, IPEN, and Norway support the text of this paragraph as it is or with only minor modifications. One stakeholder, Canada, proposes to include voluntarily and substitute human resources for in-kind resources. Well, another stakeholder, IPEN, suggests to remove secondments and to make any contribution agreement public, as in one stakeholder, the US, reiterates to remove this paragraph in its entirety for the same reasons stated in the paragraph discussed before. That is the result of our analysis of the feedback received from proponents, from the 5 proponents. And I would like now to open the floor for any additional comments from stakeholders. Please, the floor is open. Any requests from the floor?
It doesn't seem that we do have interventions requests.
Okay. Okay, I think everybody's getting tired also a bit. Okay, I would like to thank stakeholders for all their comments they provided, not only in written form prior to this meeting, but also the comments made at this meeting. We listened with great interest and we took note of all your comments. And well, we indeed will digest them and we will, based on your input, prepare some co-facilitators' texts on the paragraphs which were discussed today. And again, also based on the written comments you provided. And hopefully, but we will discuss that in more detail when we discuss the next steps of our work. We can at least have a full discussion on that in our next meeting. Okay, then I suggest now that we move on in the time which still remains to the next agenda item, that is the agenda item C, Resource Mobilization Strategy. And for this, I would like to pass the word and the chairmanship of this item over to my co-facilitator, Jonna. So please, can you take over and guide us all through this agenda item? Thank you very much, and Jonah, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Reggie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening again. So, for this agenda item, we'll be looking at resource mobilization and the request for electronic input. We ask for general views on the proposed resource mobilization strategy that is reflected in SciCam document SciCam/IP dot /6 that was prepared by the Secretariat for consideration at IP and IP5. We specifically asked for short statements or proposed statements or proposals on the following sections. One, proposed role of the Secretariat, SciCam Secretariat beyond 2020, the proposed strategy and mapping of stakeholders group, outreach and communication, and additional lessons learned to inform and further drafting of the proposed resource mobility strategy. Initially, we intended to address these items individually, but with your permission, if we could ask for stakeholders who are wishing to contribute in this open discussion on these items, that we could submit all our comments once of all this. And with that, I will open the floor for comments.
There are no requests for the floor yet, Yana. Okay, we do have one request for the floor coming in from Canada.
Thank you. Greg, please take the floor.
Thank you. So just to make a couple of points, I guess, on to complement our written submission. Well, I guess overall, this is a proposed resource mobilization strategy. Unfortunately, it's written primarily as a resource mobilization strategy for the Secretariat. So we certainly think that it could be broader in approach. We appreciate that you need a strong Secretariat and don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with what's put down, but it could certainly be elaborated upon. A second point, we noticed that the evaluation report on the integrated approach to financing noted a lack of necessary information to assess mainstreaming industry involvement. So you'll see in our written submission some suggestions to consider these in a revised resource mobilization strategy and think about the Secretariat's role in improving information on mainstreaming and industry involvement. These are two of the three key elements of the integrated resource or integrated approach to financing. So we want to make sure there's a very balanced approach as well as take full advantage of all three elements. On the proposed role of the SACM Secretariat beyond 2020, we think, again, in line with the thought that is a bit too focused on the Secretariat, there talk about possible and proposed enhanced functions, maybe getting a little bit ahead of the game until we understand what is going to be the level of ambition within this new instrument. Then we can talk about whether or not the Secretariat's role should be expanded. I think on the strategy and mapping, we think this is a good exercise. One note I would just bring to your attention, there's a proposed donor meeting that would be an opportunity for donors to exchange views, where we think the idea of exchanging views is great. Perhaps so expand this from a donors-only meeting to have one-on-one meetings, or this is the Secretary having one-on-one meetings with all kinds of stakeholders and getting views, and then perhaps as a follow-up having a collective meeting so that we benefit from views of all, and perhaps there are potential donors who would not have been reached if it was a donor-only meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada, for your valuable contributions. We take note of them. Eduardo, do we have anyone else on the list?
We do have the U.S. Followed by Iran.
Thank you. U.S., could you please take the floor? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I assume Reggie's request from before to be very brief is still standing, so I will do so and just say that I fully support the intervention that Canada just made. I think those are very good ideas about what this document could do, and also the point about the role of the Secretariat seems to be a little bit unclear at this point while we're still working out the details of the instrument. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We'll now give the floor to Iran. Iran, would you please take the floor?
Thank you very much. In this part, we have made some points regarding proposed strategy and mapping of the groups. There is an ambiguity in this part, in this text. For instance, for participation of developed countries to receive more commitments from middle-income countries, there is a need for more elaboration on how it can be gained, and also for private sector direct financial contribution, how it can be achieved. There is a need for more elaboration, and also for outreach and communication. The emphasis in this text has been put on focal points, including activities for outreach and communication for focal points. But the national institutions responsible for clinical and waste management also are important, as well as the general public. They should also be included in the working program of these activities. And regarding additional lessons learned section, we see that there is too much emphasis on increasing the role of industry in financing Cycle and Beyond 2020. And in the report, in this text, also it has mentioned that the role of industry since 2015 has increased, and the financial support has increased. We think if the Secretariat can develop a report about the commitment and contribution of industry from 2015 onward, it would be very helpful to understand and have a better picture of industry's role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iran. Just to point out that it was volume was a bit low, but I trust that the Secretariat was able to capture your contributions, and they will be taken note of and reflected. Great. Eduardo, could you confirm that the Secretariat could have heard the contributions?
Yes, Jonah, and if necessary, we would get in touch directly for written inputs from Iran.
Thank you very much. We have anyone else on the list asking for the floor?
Yes, we do have Laura from the EU.
Laura, could you please take the floor? Thank you.
Many thanks, Co-Chair. I try to be brief as possible. On the proposed role of the Secretariat, we echo some of the earlier comments that this is, of course, still under discussion in various groups, and we should wait to have a clear and comprehensive picture of Secretariat's role and functions. We do note, though, already that the findings of the independent evaluation reveal the need for reconciliation of stakeholders' expectations and the contributions to the Secretariat, so we should keep this in our considerations when deciding on the future role and functions of the Secretariat. On the proposed strategy, in line with the comments we heard from Canada, we also think that there should be a more clear distinction in the proposed resource mobilization strategy regarding On one hand, the resource mobilization for the Secretariat, and on the other hand, the resource mobilization for the implementation of the future framework and the sound management of chemicals and waste. We also see that there should be more emphasis placed on domestic resource mobilization for the future work, for the implementation of the future work. This could include cost recovery mechanisms to cover the cost of national administrations. We also think it might be useful to examine potential obstacles for closer cooperation.
Laura, your call seemed to have dropped.
Laura, you are still unmuted, but we lost the last part of your intervention. I think she might have some technical problems, Jonah.
Okay, so if I'm allowed, we would like to move on, and if she could reconnect and ask for the floor at a later time, then we could give her back the floor to finish suggestions and comments, her intervention. Okay. Do we have anyone else asking, any stakeholder asking for the floor under this section?
No, we don't have any further requests for the floor.
Okay. So thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, stakeholders, for contributions on the resource mobilization strategy. Secretariat will take note of your comments and will integrate them in a revised document and possibly it at later. Laura, if she's able to rejoin, then she can ask for the floor. I'm not sure if you want to try it again now, so that she can finish her intervention.
No, I think she's having some technical connectivity problems.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So we will move on to the last item for discussion for this meeting, which is the cost recovery mechanism and other economic instruments. And previous item, we would like to open up the floor for open discussion on this topic. If we could move the presentation to the slide, I would appreciate it. I'd also like to ask stakeholders who have already spoken to lower their hands so that we would be able to recognize who would like to take the floor at the moment. So with that, I will open up the floor for discussions on cost recovery mechanisms for economic instruments, general views. Eduardo, do we have anyone requesting the floor?
We do have Laura on the list, though I'm not sure if it's from the previous session. So I'm going to unmute her. Okay, no, she has lowered her hand. So we do not have any requests now.
I'll give about 10 to 20 seconds for anyone wishing to contribute. Raise their hand. Laura, I see Laura has raised her hand once again.
Okay, so I hope I have better luck this time. So perhaps you allow me to make some points under here, since the last time I just happily spoke by myself and then realized you didn't hear the points. So we submitted written comments, but just to highlight a few points here, we think it is cost recovery mechanisms and other economic instruments are crucial for the sustainable financing of institutionalized capacities for the sound management of chemicals and waste. And we welcome this useful review and thank the Secretariat for the report. We think the review gives valuable overview and illustrates the need for solutions at national level. We would like to encourage each country to consider establishing mechanisms for cost recovery and rules on polluter responsibility in their national law. We would note that we are supportive of the suggestions in the review to develop a target referring to the use of cost recovery measures or a baseline and relevant indicators to track countries using cost recovery measures and fiscal measures for sound management of chemicals and waste. I note, of course, that these targets will be discussed in the targets group, but we thought it would be helpful to cross-reference this issue here as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura, for your contributions. Eduardo, could you assist me?
Yeah, Jonah, we do have Canada wishing to take the floor, followed by Eva Leinala from OECD.
Thank you very much. Canada, could you please take the floor? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few points to support our written submission. So Canada certainly does support the polluter pays principle. It's a basis of our Canadian Environmental Protection Act. And like the EU, we would very much encourage national laws to support this important principle. We appreciate the outline and presentation on the many economic policy instruments focusing around cost recovery and fiscal measures, including the benefit challenges that we find in the document IP.4-7. We were wondering, how can we better discuss this or not operationalize? We have to have a good discussion on it. And so we encourage the co-facilitators and the Secretary to think about ways that we can explore opportunities for the cost recovery measures and fiscal measures outlined in the document. And we suggested some of the ways that might be possible to do so in our written submission. So we hope that you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada, for intervention, and we will take all interventions and questions under consideration as we move forward with this process. We'll ask Eva, to take the floor, please.
Hello, yes, this is Eva Leinala from the OECD. And we did just submit one comment to the Secretariat on this topic, but we noticed it was not on the webpage, so I just wanted to highlight for others that this document mentions the OECD PINE database several times, a database used to track policy instruments for the environment. And we'd like everyone to know that we are working with our colleagues to develop a chemicals management domain in the PINE database to capture economic policy instruments related to chemicals management, so that this is something that then can be better used in the future to track these instruments for the chemicals management domain. And we expect that the first version of that domain to be released mid-2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for your contributions. I am sure if your comment or your intervention has not yet been uploaded to the website, that the Secretariat will look into it and make the necessary arrangements to have that. I think we have David. David next on the list. David, could you please take the floor?
Yes, thank you very much. And as was mentioned before, we do strongly support the use of recovery mechanism at national level to cover some of the costs. We also do believe that, as pointed into the report, national instruments alone are not a panacea, and that it is challenging, as also included in the submissions from Brazil and a number of other countries, that there is a large imbalance between what countries can achieve through the sole use of national cost recovery mechanism. And this is why we're strongly arguing in favor of coordinated mechanism that would be put in place at national level, but that would allow all instruments to be pushing in the same directions and to be coordinated for maximum effects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for your contribution. Secretariat, could you indicate if there's
Yes,
anyone?
absolutely. Jonah, there is one more request for the floor from Marina Carrillo from Brazil.
Thank you. Brazil, Marina, could you please take the floor? Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you for giving me the floor. I would just very briefly would like to thank the co-sponsors for document IP4/7. Without prejudice to more detailed comments in our submission, I would just like to point out that any discussion of this sort should take into account the realities, the specific realities of developing countries, and any more specific pathways should be assessed on a case-by-case basis to assess real possibilities of adoption according to the different national capacities of each country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil, for your intervention. Sylvette, could you please take the floor?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So like already noted by Canada and by EU, also in our view, it is very important to establish a fee-based chemical management systems in each country. And it's very critical, I think, also for the countries to prioritize the funding of this chemical management and ensure that all the fees are collected that are also streamed into the chemical management systems. We also note that there are many tools developed by UNEP, by governments, by everybody, and it could help to guide countries in transition or developing countries in setting up such systems and to support for development of chemical management. And that should be also high priority for the capacity building projects that we also might be discussing in future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvette. I would like to take this time to just indicate and mention that Molly has indicated in the chat that they are unable to take the floor because of a low connection. But on behalf of the Africa region, that they support the idea from CL about the coordinated plan. So just to point that out for stakeholders, take note. Secretariat, we have any requests for the floor?
No, Jonah, we don't have any further requests for the floor.
Seeing that we don't have any requests for the floor, I would like to say thank you to all stakeholders for your contributions. It was a very vibrant and valuable discussion. We had to, time was kind of short, so we had to make our comments as concise as possible, but we will take note of all of them, including the written submissions, and they will be integrated into a revised document. So with that, I will pass back on to my co-editor, Reggie. I'd just like to say once again, thank you all for your contribution and operation in this group. Reggie?
Yeah, thank you, Jonah, for giving me the floor. And it's up to me now to guide you through the last agenda item, the next steps and the way forward. Indeed, I fully agree with you, Jonah. It was a very, good meeting, I would say. Intensive, but constructive also. Very helpful to get also the additional comments from stakeholders. And indeed, we took note of them. And it is indeed now our intention as co-facilitators, as I indicated before, that the co-facilitators will now prepare, some text proposals on the integrated approach to financing, and then specifically on the mainstreaming and the dedicated external financing component, as well as on the strategic partnerships and financing the secretariat. That those proposals from us is indeed based on the two feedbacks periods we launched and we received from you stakeholders. And we also take into account, of course, the comments made by you during our 2 meetings. What is still at stake is, of course, the component of the private sector involvement. And I also saw in the chat function already a question asked by David from Ciel, and he also indicated, asked the question at the start of this meeting. As you know, tomorrow there will be a meeting organized and managed by the colleagues from ICCA to discuss in more detail the paragraphs on this the private sector involvements, with the aim of trying to merge them where possible. In addition to that, there is also on the table the ICCA proposal for a clearinghouse for capacity building, and that will also be discussed in more detail tomorrow. It is, of course, important that the result of that work in that small working group, the outcome of that work, will be shared with us, with the virtual working group. So what I would like to say is indeed that we will indeed, as co-facilitators, prepare some draft texts. We will propose new text, but we will also share with you, all participants in this virtual working group, the results of this small working group, which deals with the items I mentioned before. That will be shared with you, and as a consequence, we will discuss the whole bunch of outcome of our work, but also the work of the small working group at our last meeting, our last virtual working group meeting. That meeting was tentatively scheduled for the 13th of January, as you know, from our schedule of work. But we thought it more useful to postpone that, the next virtual meeting, with 1 week, so that we will convene the 20th of January instead of 13th January. So 20 January 2021, next year, between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock CET. And that will indeed provide us as co-facilitators adequate time to review the written submissions, and that we hopefully can make progress on the paragraphs that will result in the outcome of this virtual working group. Again, as I indicated before, we will also share with you the outcome of this small working group. Important for you also to know is that we will circulate our co-facilitators' proposals for text by Monday, the 21st of December, with a deadline for written submissions on the 11th of January 2021. That is indeed based on our work, the work we as co-facilitators in close cooperation with the SAICM Secretariat is the result of this virtual working group. So you have time to digest, to comment under the Christmas tree on the documents which we will send to you. And again, we will also share with you the outcome of this small working group. I think that are the main items which I should indeed share with you. I understand from the chat functions there's still some communication going on how to participate in the small working group tomorrow. And I hope that indeed the organizer can indeed, ICCA can indeed take care of it. The main issue is, of course, that it is an inclusive process. It is transparent, it is open-ended, so small doesn't mean small, limited, but indeed it would allow all relevant stakeholders to participate in that exercise. And again, they are not preparing draft recommendations for us, the virtual working group, or for the co-facilitators. No, they are only working us and assisting us in preparing our, that means the virtual working group, on financial considerations, on our contributions, well, to the IP process next year. I hope this is clear enough for you, and that I was clear enough for you in my presentation, in my statement. Anybody else would like to ask questions or have queries?
Reggie, we do have two requests for the floor, one from David Azulay from CL, followed by Servet from ICCA.
Okay. David, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Reggie, and maybe it would have been useful to take Servet's intervention first, because maybe she will respond to some of the questions that I'm raising. I'm just quite surprised by the process that is being followed, because we received a general email sent to everyone indicating, if you want to join, please give us information. Several of us have responded to that email, have received no acknowledgement of receipt, no further information about the meeting, no indication of the agenda one day before the meeting. I'm a little confused about how we expect a process run like this to deliver anything meaningful and constructive if there is indeed an intention for several and for all stakeholders to be able to participate constructively and bring something to the meeting. I am quite concerned about how this could be done in these particular conditions. Following this, I would like to point out that there was also a questionnaire that was sent by the SAICM Secretariat to all focal points in relation to this aspect of industry participation or this pillar. And it was unclear to us how this questionnaire relates to the work that we're currently doing, whether the timing is a coincidence, whether it is designed to feed into the work of the small group, whether it is designed to feed into the work of this larger virtual working group. So it would have been useful to also get some clarifications about this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David, for asking these questions. Servet, can you respond? And then the Secretariat on the latter question raised by David.
Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, David, for your questions. To be frank, I'm a bit surprised in hearing that the emails were sent to us and the SAICM Secretariat without response. I mean, I think we until today we received 35 participants. Each time SAICM Secretariat was in copy. So we haven't received any email from you, David, as far as I know. But to respond to Reggie's comments, indeed, it is an open, informal meeting that we offer to moderate, with the emphasis on the word moderate. It's not that we are going to lead the topic. And we hope to assist the co-chairs in a way that is constructive, actually similar to the process we have initiated in Bangkok, where we, I think, discussed until late in the night to come to a commonality. But again, please send me and then Eduardo and the SAICM Secretariat a wish to participate, and I'm very happy to add you to the list. We have now, I think, Eduardo, I sent you the list, updated list this morning, 35 participants. But I haven't received any requests from you. Thank you.
Okay, before I give the floor to the Secretariat to answer the second question, can you, Servet, please indicate a bit the agenda, and because then people already know what will be discussed tomorrow, please, Servet.
Yes, thank you, Reggie. Well, the agenda is actually the one that both co-chairs mentioned on our kickoff meeting in end of November. So it is about to advance on the thought that we proposed for the capacity building clearinghouse. So we have 2 hours. It's tomorrow between 1 and 3 European time. The majority of the meeting will be to better explain what the capacity building clearinghouse constitutes, what is the objective, and how we can all move this idea forward to benefit the 5 SAICM objectives. And the other point, again, it was explained by the co-chairs end of November, is to try to find a commonality within the stakeholders on the 3 paragraphs concerning private sector engagement, similar the way that we have done in Bangkok. I hope this responds to the questions raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Servet. David, is that fine with you for the time being?
Reggie, so David has kindly resent the email, so we have it now, and we'll follow up. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just in regards to the questionnaire and the purpose of the questionnaire, input from stakeholders for enhancing industry involvement, and it will be used to facilitate the development of a guidance document on this of the industry involvement component of the approach. So this was and it will be developed by 2 independent consultants. There are other parts of the methodology that will be included, and we'll have expert interviews and also a literature review as well. So in terms of timelines, of course, it won't feed into the work of the virtual working group. It won't be ready by January, but we hope that, let's say, by March period, we will have some, perhaps a draft prepared and take it forward. So I hope that responds to the question from David in terms of timeline.
Okay, thank you, Nalini, Secretariat. David, any comments?
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry, I didn't see that I could unmute myself. I was waiting to be unmuted. Well, thanks for the clarification. Sorry to say that I just want to clarify the topic. I did not resend the email now. I sent it on December 4th. I sent it to both the Secretariat and Servette. The Secretariat acknowledged 10 minutes ago that it had received the email on December 4th, and so the email was sent. And it was received by then, and we have received nothing since then. Given the importance that we attach to this discussion that I think we have expressed in the previous meeting, I am a little surprised and concerned about the process that leads. It's uncanny coincidence that the NGO that has published the most detailed plan for addressing this particular issue is forgotten, or whose email is lost in the process, whereas everybody else is participating. My agenda is full for tomorrow. I'm going to try to reorganize and reshuffle things around to see if me or some of my colleagues could participate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. And well, for what it's worth, be assured that at least Jonna and myself, we will also participate tomorrow as observer in that meeting in order to check if everything goes well. For what's worth, of course, but indeed, I think it is very important that also, well, your views are indeed heard and mentioned tomorrow in that meeting on the private sector in involvement. And I'm happy that at least you can make the time to participate anyway tomorrow. That would be good. Thank you for that. Okay, again, if there are any other stakeholders who would like to take the floor on the next step, so be aware, the next meeting has been postponed, 20th of January. You can see it on the screen, and we will also launch a feedback procedure, the third one, on the documents which the co-facilitators in consultation with the Secretariat has prepared, and also we will distribute the outcome of the small working group activities which will take place tomorrow. Okay, also have a look at the clock at the time. We are, well, out of time, I would say. Sorry for that. Again, I think it was a very useful meeting, and if I may also, Jonna, on behalf of you, thank you all for your participation in this meeting. Also would like to thank the Secretariat for their assistance in helping us through this meeting. I think it went well. And well, having said that, for some, I see you tomorrow, and the others, I wish Happy New Year, Happy Christmas, of course, despite COVID-19. Well, all the best to you. Stay safe, and well, we see each other soon. Thank you very much for participating in this virtual working group. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.